What's going on, everyone? It's Brandon Turner, host of the BiggerPockets podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. David Green. Welcome to show 399. David, how you doing?
I couldn't be doing better. I'm on the BiggerPockets podcast.
Woo.
Actually, I probably could be doing better. I'm very sore. I kicked my own butt this weekend running and hiking in the woods, and so I feel really good, but I'm definitely tired.
Getting the goods in the woods, as our friend Tim would say.
Yes, he would, and it rhymes, so everyone here that's heard this will remember it.
They will remember it, yep. Anyway, what's up, man? I know you've been working out a lot. You've been getting all in shape and stuff and looking good.
I can't work out. All the gyms are closed in California.
You've been running. Running's working out. It's the same thing. Whatever.
Well, I guess. I think of working out like lifting weights, and I think of running like just hell.
You got to go
torturing yourself.
You got to. My buddy Mike says like, what he calls it, farm fit or something like that. It's like you got to get in shape with what you have around your house. So like benching cows and
like they use bales of hay.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to get
bags to feed.
Exactly.
Like Rocky and Rocky 4, where he's out in the woods just using picking up trees and stuff.
You do what you got to do. You go get your camera, set it up on a little timer, then go grab a tree, hold it up, and I want to see that in your Instagram later. What's your Instagram? David Green 24. Everyone go to David Green 24 on Instagram right now and go look for David's picture of him holding a tree.
Can't you just invite me to Hawaii and I can do this with fun stuff in Hawaii?
I want you to pick up some water and hold it above your head.
We'll go swimming.
There you go. You can do like the hair flip thing that girls do with the cool Instagram, like the hair flipping in the sunset.
That. Just wait. Good. One of these days, I'm going to unleash it on the world. They're not ready for it.
It's like blue steel or like Magnum, right? All right, we got it. Yeah, there we go.
I call mine green magnesium.
We got to get on today's show. But before we do, let's get to today's quick tip. Today's quick tip is very simple. Earlier we recorded, but it's coming up here. We just got finished recording with today's guest, George, who's awesome. You're going to love him. George tells a story later on in the show about how he bought a duplex and the rents that he found out that was actually being charged were not what the rents were advertised as being charged. So I just wanted to throw this out there because I do mention it in the show. There is something called an estoppel agreement or an estoppel certificate that you have tenants sign when you buy a property that has already been, that's currently rented. Just throwing that out there. If you're going to buy a property, make sure you search BiggerPockets or even Google if you don't like BiggerPockets and search for estoppel, ESTOPPEL, I think.
Wow.
And
good job.
Thanks. I just wrote that chapter in my book, the multifamily book that I'm writing. And so it's in my head fresh. I probably got it wrong and now I look like a complete moron. Anyway, don't always trust what agents say is the rent. A lot of times they're writing what the rent could be, not what the rent is. So make sure you verify that before you buy a property. And that is today's quick tip. All right. Not that
Trust
I'm saying
but verify.
Yeah, not that I'm saying
great.
Agents are liars, but a lot of agents are liars. All right.
You got to be careful of those
Careful of those characters. With that, we got to get to today's show. So today's guest is George Gipson. George Gipson is an awesome dude who was a mail carrier, and he's going to tell us a story today about how he went from that to full-time real estate investor through the power of just cash flow and doing a little bit of flipping in there. He's got a lot of cool stuff today. A lot of just really good advice. Everything from like we mentioned the quick tip, the estoppel stuff. We talk about what it takes to actually quit your job. We talk a lot about house hacking today. We talk a little bit about buying at auctions and so much more. George is just a bundle of energy, and I think you're going to like his show. By the way, just a quick word of, warning. It's not really a warning, but right in the middle of the show or towards the end of the show, George's microphone gave out, so we switched to his other microphone. So if you all of a sudden hear a change in microphone sound, don't get panicked. It's not your audio in your car. It is just a change in microphone, and be aware. With that said, anything you want to add? Or should we?
Nope, let's bring him in.
All right, let's get to today's show with George Gipson.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
All right, George, welcome to the BiggerPockets podcast, man. Good to have you here. How you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
I want to hear a little bit about your story. Getting into real estate, obviously, but I know you were a mail carrier. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Basically, I was a mail carrier. I graduated college, and I didn't use my degree right off the rip. I became a mailman at the post office. So I worked for the post office for maybe 6 years. And the first year at the post office, I was listening to music, right? So I'm driving the mail truck. I'm listening to music. I ran out of all the songs to listen to. And I come across podcast app, right? So when I come across the podcast app, I type in like success, motivation, real estate. And over time, I discovered the podcast. It was like around episode in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
So yes, that was the beginning, right?
Yeah,
so
that was a while ago.
I literally remember where I was at when I listened to my first episode. I was just thinking about today, like what street I was on. So I listened to the episode and I was delivering mail. I listened to the first episode and I pulled over and I was like, it basically like, this is me right here. I comprehended everything this guy just said. So I'm on the side of the road. So whenever you see a mailman on the side of the road and he's just looking at his phone, he's probably looking for the next podcast. But I went back to episode 1 and I started from there. In my journey, I listened to the podcast every Thursday. And for 5 years, I was at the post office. And when I first discovered it, I didn't have any rental properties. And I just listened and kept learning. And then my goal became to, I want to leave my job by buying rental properties. So like today, last year, back in May, I quit my job and I didn't have any properties when I quit, but I quit my job. And I basically, a guy told me, George, when you put 2 feet in the real estate game, you're going to take off. And that's basically what happened. Like I got into real estate and now I got 12 properties, mostly single family and 1 duplex.
I love that you just said, like somebody said, once you jump in full time, you're really going to take off. And because I think that's the way for a lot of people. Like people are like toying around with it and they like the idea of it and they've got the intelligence to be able to do it. They got the education. They obviously know what they're doing enough, but their job holds them back. And so it's cool that you were actually able, so you quit your job at some point to jump in full time.
Yes. I mean, it was scary. And, I listened to all the podcasts and they say you want to have maybe making exactly what you're making at your job in rental income. But it was like for people listening, what I'm about to say today, you have to believe what I'm saying because everything like Brandon David say, it works. Like my people in the at the job, they would be like, man, you can't buy that house, or even family members. Oh, that's not a good deal. But the people you're asking maybe don't even have any rental properties, so they don't see the vision. Yeah. So my friends was like the podcast guest.
That's awesome. All right, let's go back to the beginning then. How did you get your very first property?
All right, I discovered podcasts. I was living at my parents' house. Me and my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, but I was living at my parents' house and I had started listening to BiggerPockets. So even though it was a personal home, I still was trying. I knew at the end of the day, it would be an investment. So I wasn't thinking like, I'm going to live here forever. So I started doing my research based off the information I knew. And I found a house, basically 3 bedroom, 2 bath. And the crazy part about it is when I Googled my address, it was a flip. The person who was doing the flip is a member of BiggerPockets. So they had put the whole deal inside of BiggerPockets. So I seen what he purchased for, how much he put into it. And I'm like, I'm buying this deal. And he, you know what I mean? He asking questions on the forum.
That's funny.
So that was my first property. I purchased a 3 bedroom, 2 bath for like $130,000. And I actually, in that deal, the house was in the flood zone. So this is my first time purchasing a home and I had no idea about the flood zone. So once I found out the home was in the flood zone, I immediately went to Google and started looking up, should I buy a house in the flood zone? Mm-hmm. Every post said, do not buy a house in the flood zone. Do not. So I'm like, I made a mistake, So in that situation, I tried to back out the deal, honestly, but it was investors with the guy and they was threatening to sue me for $10,000. And I'm like, I don't even have $10,000. How you going to sue me? But that was my first deal. I ended up buying that house and I stayed there for a while. Then I sold it. When I sold it, I made like $20,000 profit. And I was like, that was the most money I ever had at one point in time at that time.
Okay. You've said 2 things I want to comment on. The first was this one right here. Everyone said, don't buy a house in a flood zone, followed by, I sold it, I made $28,000, and I went on to my next thing. Your first deal, you didn't know exactly what you were doing. You found it on the BiggerPockets forums, I'm going to guess, or maybe the marketplace. Is that where it was?
No, the house was listed on the MLS, but the person who did the flip, they were asking questions on the forum.
Gotcha.
So the address was on there.
And the second thing you said was everybody says don't leave your job until you've got the same income from real estate investing. And what I'm getting at here is I don't like the hard and fast rules.
Says. Yep.
Yes, this is the way you're supposed to do it, okay? it doesn't work that way. We see this with like a bird deal. You're supposed to get 100% of your money out. So if you leave 11% of your capital in that deal, you did a bad deal. Well, that's not true, because if you compare that to the 20 or 25% you would have left in it plus the rehab cost, that's a way better deal. It's like a third of the money. And I hear it with house hacking. Well, the house should pay for 100% of your income. Well, that's not always realistic. Some of these houses we're helping people with in the Bay Area, their mortgage would be $7,000. Instead, it's $2,000. That's a $5,000 net to them. That's so much better than if 100% of their money came back that was $2,200 a month. It's more than double what the other person would be.
Everyone has to get the 1% rule or the 2% rule. That's
yes,
the only way. Like,
it
you
doesn't
have to
meet
get
the
this.
1% rule. I can't buy it. My cash and cash return is not 15. It's 14.7%, and I can't go for it. And then you look at like 5 years down the road, and their rents have increased so much that it's blown away that 15%. But the person who bought the one that did meet their, I'm just using 15% as a hypothetical number, the rents haven't gone up at all, right?
Right.
You can't create this hard and fast way of looking at this. I much rather prefer to look at it like, would I be better off if I bought it or if I didn't? It's just a much better metric to look at than, does it meet 100% of my needs? And as we go through your story, what I wanted to point out was that none of everything you tell us would have happened if you had listened to the people who said, don't buy a house in a flood zone. Don't do it unless you can get this. This is the only way to do real estate investing. And I'd also like to point out that in 5 years from now, whatever success you have now will probably be dwarfed by what you get if you continue to put 100% into real estate investing. So everybody keep that in mind too.
George, can you explain for those who don't know, like, what does it mean, a flood zone? What does that mean? And I want to talk about that for a minute too.
I'm in Florida, so a lot of the older properties are not built up on elevation. So with that being said, the government thinks that your house is more likely to flood if you have high water. So in this case, this house, it wasn't on a high flood. It wasn't the worst flood zone, but it was in the flood zone. So in that case, whenever you're in the flood zone and you're getting a mortgage, FHA conventional, you must have flood insurance. And that was like the big kicker to me, because you want your payment to be low, but this flood insurance is going to make your payment go higher.
Yeah. So flood insurance, I actually built almost all my first properties, all of them in the beginning were in flood zone areas, because flood zone areas were just cheaper. Like it was cheaper to buy in a flood zone than it was not a flood zone in my town of like Grays Harbor, Washington. And people said I shouldn't do it.
It's funny. Brandon and I have driven through his town. All those houses look like they're built on stilts.
Yeah,
like the whole town. That's how they build them.
They build them up. Yeah, it's a different type of building. But like, you know what? Flood insurance, yes, it costs money, and there is some risk added there, because like right now, like this is a very short explanation, but right now, flood insurance would be very, very expensive. However, the government actually subsidizes flood insurance right now. So there's a government program that have for decades. They've subsidized it because they want people to have flood insurance and not destroy their livelihood because of a flood. Normal insurance does not cover floods. And so you have to get flood insurance if you're in an area the government says, hey, this is a floody area. They should just call them floody areas, not flood zones. I think floody area is a better word. So in a floody area,
Brandon.
yes, in a floody area, you basically said, hey, you have an increased chance, so you have to have this flood insurance, and we're going to help subsidize it. So I mean, the costs are different depending on what state you are and all this stuff, but it's not a crazy amount. Right? Do you remember how much your flood insurance was per month?
Yes, and that's the crazy part. The flood insurance is only like $300 a year. So I bought another property that's in flood insurance. It just, when you Google it or ask other people, it's just, they say, don't buy a house in flood zones.
Yeah. Instead, I just say, do the math, work backwards, like run your numbers as needing flood insurance. I mean, like, so we have the BiggerPockets, rental calculator and the Burr calculator. Like when you're running a number in there, or if you just do it on your own method, like put a spot in there, just says flood insurance, like insurance other. Flood insurance. So I always add that in if I'm going to look in a flood zone. And it's definitely not something to be like, it's kind of like people who say you shouldn't buy a house with a bad foundation, or you shouldn't buy a house with a bad, just figure it out. Like, in fact, by doing so, you can get good at something that most people are afraid of. So maybe it's actually a good thing that people are afraid of things like flood zones, and maybe we shouldn't be talking about it here, because like just
every deal I help customers, and maybe they find out that the water pump is bad or the septic tank is no good. And the first thing they do is scratch off the whole deal, saying they don't want to buy the house. And me as an investor, I tell them, all right, let's find out how much it costs to fix it. So now how much it costs to fix it, I usually just subtract that from the purchase price and make my offer. Yeah, we go from there.
Yeah, every problem's got a number.
That's exactly, I think the first show I ever hosted with you, Brandon, that's what I said, is you'd ask me about lead-based paint or termites, all these things that people say never do it. No, just take the problem, turn it into a number, and make the numbers work. Numbers are the common denominator. So if someone says, oh, the foundation's going to cost 50 grand. Well, if you get a $150,000 discount, and then maybe you know someone that does foundations that could do it for 30 grand, that's actually a good thing to look for. You should be grateful that there is a foundation problem. And I love that advice you're giving, George, is to don't just automatically disqualify a deal. Look at it and say, can I handle this? And how do I make the numbers work?
Cool, man. All right. Well, let's go on to the rest of your story. So you bought this first house. It was a flip, right?
Well, I lived in it for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And, my realtors, I was watching houses go up for sale. And I was like, I wonder, could I sell it? And she was like, yeah, it don't cost you to list it. And at the time, I didn't know. So I was like, let's list it for sale. I sold it. It took about 3 to 4 months. And when I listed the property for sale, I had somebody turned the garage into a 3rd bedroom. So in the image for the realtor picture, when the garage is down, they think they got a garage. Well, when you lift it up, it's only half a garage. So I had like 30 buyers, well, not buyers, but people come look at it. And when they lift that garage up, it completely turned the deal off. So I told the realtor, maybe I should, add a driveway on the side. She was like, do not spend any money on this house. Do not spend any money. You're selling it. But I went in and did it anyway. I painted the house, put the driveway, and the next person who came, they put it on offer. So I went with my gut, as an investor, realtor, investor. I think sometimes I have 2 different mindsets.
Yeah. It's smart. Sometimes like you just gotta kind of go with your gut, figure out what you think is going to be best there. Like the bedroom in the garage, like basically like you added a bedroom, which made the garage way smaller. The person did. Okay, so that made people feel weird about the house. Yeah,
yes, it looked like a full garage, but you lift it up, it was like a half a garage. So that's what messed that deal up. But
it was also a 2-bedroom house, not a 3-bedroom house, because that 3rd bedroom was in the garage, right?
It's not in the garage. They converted the garage into a 3rd bedroom. So now you have a bedroom. So it's a 3-2 basically.
Yeah, makes sense.
What made me in the first place want to sell that house was I was listening to the podcast, and people were always talking about buying a duplex, living in one side, renting the other side out. Yeah. So immediately at my job, I had this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I had bought a dog. I had 2 cars, 2 car payments. And we was going to work. Me and my wife both working at the post office. We going to work. We come home. We eat dinner, go to sleep, do it again. And I was like, this can't be the rest of my life. Like adulthood. I was really stressing out. Not stressing out, but I was like, this can't be like the best part of life. So as I listen to the podcast, they say you can live for free if you buy a duplex. So I sold the house. I got this money in the bank. Now I'm looking for a duplex. And I thought it would be easy to find a duplex because, you're looking for it, but every duplex came up, the numbers were not working. So I come across one day, I'm just scrolling the not MLS. I wasn't a realtor at the time, but I'm scrolling on Realtor and I see a house. It says mother-in-law suite. So I said, maybe this will work. So me and my wife, we called a realtor. She booked the appointment. We came look at the house, and immediately I looked at the whole house. And then we went and looked at the mother-in-law suite, and the mother-in-law suite was completely brand new. Like, the whole house was kind of older, but the mother-in-law was brand new. I'm like, this is perfect. I can rent this part out and live in the big part. So we ended up putting an offer in on that house. And that's kind of like what got me able to save up money, because now I got my house, I'm living in the house, but we Airbnb out the mother-in-law suite, in which it covered the entire mortgage. So basically, we're living for free at that time,
That's awesome. I love the Airbnb house hack strategy. I think right now at this time of COVID, at least in a lot of areas, it's not necessarily the best idea, but like I've always loved it, and I still will always love that strategy because it's just so solid. You're living in the unit, so it's easy to turn it over. You can do the work if you want to. You can hire a cleaner if you really don't want to, and you just get more rent ideally. And you're paying for your own internet anyway, so it's like they can have the internet. And you're paying for your own water anyway, so who cares if your extra unit has that? So that's smart. Yeah, that whole house hacking thing. That's why David and I talk a lot about it, because it's like once you're living for free, now you can legitimately save money. Versus all the financial pundits out there are like, just don't drink your coffee every morning and you can save 12 cents a day. And after 89 years, you'll have enough to live on Social Security spam. It's like, I don't know. That's like the common advice. All right. So you buy this duplex or this house with the mother-in-law, which by the way is a fantastic just tip for people is like when you're looking on like realtor.com or Zillow or Trulia, look for those things. You can even set up keywords with things like mother-in-law or ADU or those terms that like a lot of agents don't even realize what they're putting on the market is a big deal because they're just like, whatever. It's just a little, I don't know. Most people aren't going to want that. They don't want to be landlords. They don't realize that is the gold like nugget for somebody. So,
yeah.
All right, so yeah.
And the lady I bought the house from, she didn't even rent that part out. She used the whole house, and she was by herself. So that was like, if the mortgage was too much, that was the perfect opportunity to rent that part out. Yeah. Maybe, and that's what Brandon always talk about, the tool belt. Listen to the podcast. I felt like I had every tool belt to conquer any deal. Yeah. So when I seen that, I seen dollar signs, and it worked out perfect because once we started living there and the Airbnb's up and running full, we became a super host, and became a super host. So it was just fully rented out up until COVID, it kind of slowed it down. So we just turned into a regular rental. But that was the starting point to saving money, because you can't be a real estate investor without learning how to budget and save money first. That's like the first step to even thinking about becoming a real estate investor.
Do you have any tips for people who want to do that? Like they have a duplex, or they want to buy a duplex or a house with an ADU, and like they want to do the Airbnb thing. Just what have you learned over the past few years of doing it and trying it out? Like what worked, what didn't work? What advice can you offer?
I can say for your first time, if you find a duplex or a house with an extra guest house on it, some of the things I would say is, it was my first time becoming a landlord, really. So I learned that one thing for Airbnb is a smaller place is easier to manage. So I also have a 3-bedroom Airbnb. And the difference is, if you got like a mother-in-law or a little 1-bedroom place for Airbnb, it's much easier to clean. Because for Airbnb, some people book a 3-bedroom house and say it's one person, and then like 10 people show up. So, you got a lot of mess to clean up. So I found out Airbnb, for me, I like smaller space. And then also, as far as being a landlord, you have to get the right tenant in there. I have Airbnb, I have people that book for a month. And then in my case, I'm in a quiet neighborhood. So a person will book it and they like to sit outside and drink or do outdoor activities. And this type of neighborhood is not for that type of environment, like a beach house or some beach Airbnb. It's more like a person who is working in town. They need to rent it out. So you need to let the person who's booking it know more details than what you expect. Like if you don't want no smoking outside, which I don't like, you need to let the people know, because it become a hassle because you living on that property and you got to sit and deal with them people.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, that applies to all landlording. Just like establish upfront your criteria and like, this is what we allow, this is what we don't allow. And it just makes it like the whole process so much easier. Especially it's in writing. You can be like, hey, look, man, you signed this thing. Or, I said this in the listing ahead of time. It makes management a whole lot easier when you kind of manage their expectations up front. So
right.
Yeah, very cool. All right. So by the way, what market is this in? It's a
smaller town, Vero Beach, Florida. It's probably like an hour north of West Palm Beach or an hour from Orlando.
Okay.
You heard of that?
All right. Yes. Yeah. I love Orlando. I love Disney World. Come on. So is this near the beach? I mean, are people staying here because they want a beach vacation? Like a lot of people are thinking, well, I don't live in, on a beach in Florida. I can't have a vacation rental. Is that what yours is, or?
No, Airbnb is for people. It's almost cheaper than a hotel. In my case, it's a studio apartment, basically, mother-in-law suite. So people that book it, for the most part, they're traveling. They may be going to weddings, or we're not. I mean, I'm like 7 minutes from the beach, so I don't really advertise that it's a beachfront property. But if you want to drive to the beach, you're not that far away. So, I mean, Airbnb, far before it was just people book it because it's more convenient than a hotel, and you can almost live like a local rather than living like a visitor sometimes.
I think that's a huge misconception when it comes to vacation rentals or short-term rentals, is they think you have to be at Disney World or whatever. But if people travel to your place, if there is any hotel in your area, you could likely have a vacation rental or a short-term rental, because people are obviously traveling there. If there's a hotel for business or for weddings or whatever, yeah.
All right, I'm saving money by buying in this house, and while I'm at the post office, this is like the perfect job for a real estate investor. I know where I'm like, it was like a disguise with God, because if I wasn't in that mail truck, I wouldn't have learned the market like I do now, like I know the market now. So I'm driving literally every street, every road, and I'm paying attention. I'm listening to podcasts, so I'm listening to people who doing real estate, but I started learning what to rent for. I talked to every landlord on my route. I could recognize the landlord. Like I recognize them. So I'm getting advice from them. And my next deal was I seen a house, a guy standing outside. It was a vacant house. And I stopped in the mail truck. You know, I pulled over. I walked in the house. I said, "Hey, this your house?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm here in town from Oklahoma. I'm finna auction it off on Saturday." So I said, "Wow, I might be interested." So he said, "Yeah, show up to the auction on Saturday." Well, I work on Saturday. So I hope the post office not listening, but I don't work no more. But I made my route. I made my route where I basically, when the time came near, I made it so I was by that house.
Oh, that's awesome.
The auction was like 10 o'clock. So I was doing my route, and at like 9:55, I like made sure I was right there in front of the house. So it's maybe like 10 people out there. They started the auction off, and I told my wife not to go over 49,000. We were there together. And the auction get up to 48, 49. I don't know how to stop bidding. That's like my hardest part. I have to have my wife, all right, this is the number I'm telling you now. Do not let me go over it. But I said 49. I ended up bidding up to 52,000. It's an auction. Certain auctions the owner don't have to accept the deal. So basically it ended at 52,000. The owner, he accepted the offer, but the auction company, they thought that the owner would not accept the offer because he was expecting to get like 70,000 from it. And they were like, we would have bought it if he was going to sell it for that low. So, I had a 30 days to close on it, and I had a line of credit already set up. And basically I bought that house for $52,000. And then after I bought it, I was planning on going to the bank to get a loan on it. But at the time I could not get a loan. So I was like, I guess I just sell the house. So I put it for sale for like 80,000, and it ended up selling for 75,000. And it took like 2 months. And I made, it was like almost 20 grand right there. And I was like, that was crazy. I only make this much. Like at my job, it take me after taxes, you make like $35,000 a year. This took 2 months, and I made this much money. And I didn't have to do anything to the house. I sprayed air freshener in it, trimmed up the front tree, and it was ready to go. And that was like my first, that was my next big flip. First flip and making that type of money.
Can I bring up a point here real quick? Which I love is that, like, what you did there. Some people might be listening to this going, well, you were a mail carrier, so you were driving around. Of course you saw that deal when it came up. But the truth is, we all drive around all the time. We're going places, right? So what I would advise people is, like, don't think like you were a mail carrier, so you were driving a lot. But like every time you drive, are you looking for those opportunities? And then most importantly, are you getting out of the car? Like what you did that most people will never do is you got out of the car. You saw a person at a vacant house and you went and talked to them. You got out of the car. And so 99% of people I talk to that want to get into real estate will never get out of the car. They want it handed to them. They want an easy deal. They don't want to have to talk to people. They want things simple. And it's not like it's hard to talk to people, but we all just don't do it. And so anyway, I just want to, congratulate you on getting out of the car. And
you may not be driving around looking at houses, but how many people work with others at their job and they never talk about real estate to them?
Yep.
It's easy to say, oh, well, George sees houses driving around his mail truck. I would argue George is at a disadvantage, not talking to hardly anybody, being isolated in a truck all day. I mean, he gets to listen to podcasts, but you don't get to talk to people and tell them I want to buy a house. If you work in an office with 50 to 100 people in it, you have the chance every day to talk about real estate and have one of those people come say, hey, my friend's grandma just died. I think that they want to sell the house off market, or all kinds of opportunities come up and people won't take them. They won't do their equivalent of getting out of the truck and going to engage with somebody. So props to you, George, for doing that.
Yes. And also, David, by the time I started listening to BiggerPockets, I had all the mail carriers, like you have a duplex, because I was really interested in duplexes. So I'll tell all the carriers, you have a vacant house, they was like right in the address, and we get back to the office at 5 o'clock and they give me a piece of paper and I got like 7 addresses on it.
There you go.
I was always I was letting everybody know what I do. And the key, one of the part of my success, I think, is when you talk to a owner, a lot of times I talk to the owner and they want to help me sometime, or it's just, we talk and we just have a common bond and they make the deal happen,
Yeah, I love the tip, and I've heard of other people saying this on the podcast before, and I've never done it, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, George. Is like, talk to your mail carriers. They see every house in the neighborhood. So hey, you see any vacant houses? You know any houses that are looking like they're, distressed? You see anybody obviously going through foreclosure? Like, let me know, maybe even offer them some kind of piece or something. Like, to have those conversations with people who are and it's not just mail carriers too, right? It's anybody who just drives around a lot for their job. So talk to those people and get them hunting for deals for you.
You had a guy on your podcast, right? He was a wholesaler in my area, and I was like, wow, this guy's so close to me. Let me reach out to him. So I reach out to the wholesaler, and he immediately like, okay, that's great. I can help you. I have a course, $2,000-$3,000, and not $2,000-$3,000, but like $2,000. And I'm like, it all sounds the same to me. I don't have that money, right, to invest in a course right now.
Sure.
So he say, how about this? You're a mailman. Do you have any vacant routes on your route? I was like, yeah, I got a lot. And he was like, well, I'll do your deal. You give me the vacant houses on your route, and I'll help you out. So the next day, I'm excited. I probably misdelivered mail because I'm so worried about looking for the vacant houses. So I got my notepad on my phone pulled up, and I'm driving. It probably took me like an extra hour just to do this route because I keep stopping to put these vacant houses in my phone. So I had like 50 houses. I emailed it, texted to him the next day, and he said, great, thanks. If I buy any of these houses, I'll be in touch. So time go by, like a month or two. Next thing you know, all these houses that, I sent the person, it just got trucks out there ripping off the roof, ripping out the windows. I'm like, oh my gosh, But I never heard anything back, whether he bought it or not. But it was just like, you try so many things with people, but everybody, it got to benefit them at the end of the day.
It's cool. Like, first of all, I like the fact that you found a way in your life to bring value to somebody else. Now, whether or not it worked out or not, we'll never really know. But like, whether or not they bought one. But like, just the fact that you went out there and you're like, well, I don't have the money for a course and I don't want to spend that, so I'm going to, I'm going to find some way to bring value, and that's a good way to do it. And then I want to actually just bring up what you were doing there, something that we call driving for deals around BiggerPockets, or often called driving for dollars. And there's apps that can help with that. There's an app called Driving for Dollars, another app called Deal Machine. They're both awesome. They can kind of simplify that process. But all you're doing is exactly here what George is doing, right? Get in your car, drive around, look for vacant properties, or if you're looking for multifamily, write down the address of every multifamily. If you're looking for apartments, write down the apartment address, like whatever. You're just looking for properties, and then you go and contact them later. Whether it's what you're gonna mail them letters, you're gonna reverse, look up their phone number, find out who the owner is. Like there's all these fancy tools now that can do all that work. It gets you really, into deals that most people won't do, because most people just want to sit at home. They don't want to get in their car. They don't want to get out of the car. They don't want to do the work. And so that definitely applies to every single person here. Especially if you don't have a lot of money right now, that is a strategy everyone can do. For the cost of a tank of gas, you can drive around 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a week, every week for the next 3 months. Write down every property, or use one of those apps, write down every property, and then start contacting those owners. If you get 100 properties or 200 on your list, you will buy some of those properties if you're consistent and persistent with it. I really believe that.
And one of the things like people can do like to find deals is that because I know mailing out letters, you guys talk about that all the time. That's like I don't know the percent of that, but I haven't got a deal like that. But if you just tell everybody what you do, I told all my coworkers, the babysitter, uncles, aunties, if you tell people what you do, it's always somebody in a situation where they need to get rid of a house. So oftentimes, deals are just coming from, if you can talk to the seller directly and they want to sell you the deal, it's so much easier than going back. If I'm trying to buy a house from David and he's trying to make a $30,000 profit and I'm trying to, get a good deal, he don't really have he trying to make his money, to move on. But if you have somebody who, they're older, like a lot of people I buy houses from are 70, 80 years old, and they just looking to, get their money and they tired of rental properties basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's easy to forget, that we spend all our time saying, how do I find a deal? Where's the deal? How do I get a house? And there's a lot of people that are thinking, I wish someone would just take this problem away from me. I don't want to own real estate anymore. So
I use this analogy. I got an analogy for you. Ready for this one? I might have already told you this one, David, but
it's too late. Now you're committed.
Now I'm committed. So I'm going to say it anyway. If I said it on a previous podcast, I apologize to everyone, but I'll say it again because I was actually proud of this analogy. It was in my, I put it in my new book, The Multifamily Millionaire.
Wait, you just set yourself up to quote yourself, didn't you? You said I have something to say. I might have said it before, so let me give myself credit for my quote that I'm about to say that I came up with.
All I'm saying is
nicely done, Brandon.
No, listen, man. I put this in my book, and I thought this is a really good analogy, and now I'm going to use it on the podcast.
Author that you're quoting.
I'm quoting it. Yeah, there's a really wise author. There's a really wise author. Shut up. Let me tell you the story. All right. So the analogy is, and now the more I say this, the more I think I said this on a previous podcast, but the other day I woke up with a headache. Like this happens multiple times. I wake up with a headache and I'm like, oh, it's just like a dull headache. It's not terrible, but it's enough that's annoying. I drink some water, get some food. It just kind of gets worse throughout the day, and it just gets worse and worse until later on I'm like laying on the couch, miserable. My head's pounding, and like I'm just laying there like, oh, come on. It doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, it sucks, right? Then my wife walks in the room and asks the most annoying question in the world. Well, did you take any medicine for it? And of course I'm like, no, I haven't taken any medicine because I never even thought about taking medicine. I've had this headache. It comes on slowly. Had it been like, boom, you're in pain, what do? We go take medicine. But instead, because it came on slowly, this is exactly what it's not an annoying question. I love my wife. But like, because like she's so right. She's so right. But I didn't think of it. The same is true for landlords, right? They get this growing headache that grows over time, and they don't think about it as a headache. They just like are annoyed by it. And when you show up and be like, hey, I got some ibuprofen here for you, all of a sudden they're like, yes, why didn't I think of that? I'm so stupid. So in other words, when you contact existing landlords, a lot of them have headache properties, multiple headache properties, and you contact them like, hey, what property do you hate the most? Like what one causes you the most drama, has the biggest repair needs? Which one is your biggest headache? And would you be willing to sell it? If you were to ask me that question today, I'd be like, well, I can name exactly about 2 or 3 of my properties that I'd be like, yeah, let's have a conversation about selling them right now because they are headaches of mine.
Absolutely.
But I haven't thought about it at all. So, okay, David Green on a 1 to 10 analogy scale, the DG analogy scale, which is an official thing now, by the way. At BiggerPockets, we talk about analogies in terms of where they rate on the DG scale. So right. On the DG scale, 1 to 10.
From 1 to David Green.
Yeah, 1 to 10. Yeah, exactly. On a 1 to David Green, how good is this analogy? It's pretty good, right?
Well, I'm going to give it a high score, 7.5, particularly because you used headache in both the analogy and the example. I thought that was a good mix. You could have improved it had you brought up the frog in the boiling water argument that people make. If a frog just sits and you slowly increase the temperature, I don't even know if that's real, but
it's not a real. But
the frog will let itself. Oh, that's probably why you left it out because you're science-based analogies. Yeah. All right, thank you, accurate Andrew over there. Yeah, that's really good. And a point I wanted to make was that you also should remember part of the power of real estate is overtime. Over time, it is a powerful wealth building tool. But if you're older and you're kind of at the end of your time or coming closer to it, there's not nearly as much appeal for you to own that thing as someone else. At the end of your life, you just want convenience. So when you're starting off investing, you are happy to sacrifice convenience for wealth and for time. And that's why Brandon carries toilets that are actually literally full of poop because he doesn't mind when he's young. Whereas when you get older, it's not worth it to do that. You're happy to sell it to a Brandon and let him carry out your poop.
Yeah. It's been a decade. All right, George.
Yeah.
Let's kind of go like through the rest of your story. If you want to kind of sum up, like what happened the next few years? Where are you at today? How many units do you have? Like kind of walk through us, and how you became an agent. Yeah. I know you mentioned that.
I stopped working last year in May. So I'm like fresh off the press. It's like I'm 31 years old now. And I quit working when I was 30 years old. So it was like on a Monday at the post office. It was a crazy day. I mean, mail was just through the roof. And I was frustrated. And when I got home that day, I had a headache. I wasn't feeling good. And I was like, man, I had to use the bathroom. So when I used the bathroom, it was like blood in my stool. So it immediately scared me. Yes. So I'm like, what is going on? So I told my wife, she's like, let's go to the hospital. Went to the hospital and they were like, hemorrhoid had like bleeding. So no big deal. But on the other part, it was like, you still need to go get checked tomorrow to make sure cancer come in people's stools, So I'm like, huh? So it scared me. I'm scared. So I called the post office, say, hey, I had to go to the hospital. Such happened. They were like, are you coming in to work tomorrow? I'm like, I just told you what happened, and it felt like they didn't really care what happened. I need to come do that route tomorrow. So the next day, we made an appointment for like 9 o'clock in the morning. My wife called at work. We're driving down, to the post office. I mean, not the post office, driving to the hospital. And, listen to the podcast. A lot of times when I see, like, say I want a Ford truck, right? Next thing you know, I start seeing a lot of Ford trucks, right? It just happened like that. So I'm driving to the hospital and I start seeing words say cancer. And on the big old sign, it said cancer. I'm like, oh, man, I keep seeing this, right? So I said, before I went in there, we prayed and whatnot. And I was like, God, if I don't have it, I would follow my purpose and, my passion and my dream. So, we went in there, they did the test and whatnot. And, doctor walked in. Well, he's like, I got good news. You don't have cancer. And it was like, I got to really live up to what I just told God, Yeah. So it's like the next day is like a Wednesday. So I called out for the rest of the week because I had the hospital or whatever. So next week we go out of town that weekend. I come back, it's Memorial Weekend, that Tuesday. I say, it's like Monday night, 3:00 in the morning. I'm supposed to be to work at 7 in the morning. And I'm like, I Googled, would God tell me to quit my job? I literally Googled this because I'm going back and forth because I got bills. I just had my first son. He's 1 year old. You know, I just like everybody in the world, I have responsibilities. So I'm like, he can't tell me to quit my job. So I had turned on the TV, and you know, like the infomercials they have on like in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And it was a pastor, and he was like, the answer to your question is yes. The answer to your question is yes. And I had just Googled, you know, should God tell me to quit my job?
That's
so
awesome.
I'm like, it scared me because I'm like, I threw my phone, I put it on the nightstand, and I said, that's it. He answered my question so quickly because usually people want like bright signs to see things, you know?
Mhm.
And that was like the brightest it ever been. Like, I was like, I need you to be loud. Like, if you don't want me to go to work, when I go outside, all 4 tires need to be flat. Like, that's the type of sign I want, you know? So when he said yes, like, the answer is, will you be all right? Yes. Will you be able to survive? Yes. Will you make me successful? Yes. So that morning, you know, I woke up, I made sure I quit. I took all my post office clothes and put them in a trash bag.
Wow.
Took them, threw them in the dumpster. So I didn't have no clothes to wear to work now. So I'm basically eliminating, you know, because I was
burning
still
your
scared.
ships. Yeah.
Yeah, basically burnt the ship. So I quit. I waited a couple of days, and then I found out, like, all right, take my 2 weeks notice in. I walk into the post office. People are like, where you been? Where you been? And I had a letter, you know, and I had wrote on the letter, you know, I was basically, I just can't do it no more. And the supervisor, you know, she gave me the look. Like, you know, most managers at jobs, they doing their job. They want you to get the job done, but they know they're gonna overwork you to get it done. And that's their job. Their job, like I got workers working right now doing floors at the house. And my job is to get them to do as much as I can for like $10, $12 an hour. That's just,
That's your
you
job.
know, I'm hired them. That's my job. So she know, as a mail carrier, we want you to deliver as much mail as possible for as small amount of time, because she costs the post office less money. So she was like, she almost gave me like a look like, I'm glad you did it, because I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on you guys, but you took the chance and left, you know? She's like, I'm proud of you. So I was like, I felt some kind of relief after that, but that was the end. So next day, honestly, I was like, all right, what I'm gonna do? I went to the library and I started applying for jobs. I was so scared.
Mhm.
It's funny, you burned the ships and then you went and cut down trees. You're like, I gotta build a raft. I need something.
So, but my idea was, all right, because I had basically been saving up money because of the house hack. So like people, you're gonna just quit your job. I did have a nice savings because I've been living for free basically 2 years, saving up, no mortgage, no car payments. So I could survive for a year at least. So I went to the library. I was like, all right, like BiggerPockets say, at least if you do a job, you're not getting paid as much, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I applied for a property management job. I got my real estate license, and I know I can manage the property because I helped my dad when he managed his properties. So I have an interview, and the lady, she tell me, you go through the interview, and long story short, she didn't hire me for the job, and I felt like I was qualified. So I'm like, that's it. I'm not applying for no more jobs. You know, I always had interviews and I wouldn't get the job. So I was like, I'm not applying for no more jobs. And I put my head down and I bought my next deal, and I quit in May. I bought a duplex in September. I bought another house in the next month after that. And then February, I closed on 2 more properties. So it was just kind of like, you got to trust your instinct. Like the universe works in your favor if you're supposed to do it. Like if I'm trying to run a marathon and I'm running every day, they're gonna schedule a marathon in your city. Maybe it's gonna give you the opportunity to do it. You know.
I was going to say that when I'm in a similar situation to yours, because I think a lot of people listening can relate to just the question of whether they believe in God or not. Should I do this or not? There's this internal feeling of like, is this the right move for me? Whether you attribute that to God or fate or the universe, but we all relate to that feeling. And I see a lot of people that handle it the wrong way, where they're asking, if this is what I'm supposed to do, make it a downhill path. Make it easy for me to go that road. And if that's not what happens, then they say I'm not supposed to go that way. But how I see that play out in my own life is that I don't see the path go downhill. I feel a drive come inside me that likes that it's hard. I feel this like version of David that rises up and says, I want to lift that weight. I want to run up that hill. I like that it's really hot right now. Yesterday, actually it was Saturday, I did 14 miles and it was about 100 degrees and it was up the mountain and then running down. And it was really, really hard. I had to bring a lot of water. I had to hydrate halfway through. But there was a piece of me that was like glad it was hard. I can't describe it, but it was like there's a little thing that rose up because I knew this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be strengthening my legs and doing this hard thing. And that's how I know it's where I'm supposed to be. It's not that it's easier. It's that there's a piece of you that really wants it. And I know there's people that are listening to this that have that same, I know I'm not supposed to do what I'm doing, but I don't know what I am supposed to do. And can I get a sign? And what you're saying, I know strikes with a lot of people. And I just want to say, don't wait for someone to make it easier for you. Wait for that feeling inside that says, I don't care if it's easy. I want it so bad. I'm going to go do it.
Right. And that's the thing. A lot of people, like even me, I compare my life to Brandon. Brandon be like before you had 1 million doors, Brandon, like maybe when you had like 50, I was like, Brandon got 50 doors. I got to get 50 doors. But in my real life, nobody got around my surroundings. Nobody really got that many rental properties. So I'm comparing my life to Brandon and people on the podcast, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself. So, and I was like, that's you don't never feel satisfied. But now I feel like I'm moving like with the earth. Like I'm moving at my pace. Like the deals I get are the deals I'm supposed to get, and the fact that I just really didn't want to go to a job, I'm just happy already. So I feel like now I'm working for like my wife to get out of a job, my family, my parents stop working. So
let me ask you this. You left the mail route, you burned your boats, and then you went and became a realtor. How's the realtor thing been working out?
As a realtor, so far, I'm not the realtor like that's gonna be on the top 50 list, but I got my real estate license to help me as a real estate investor.
Yep.
So as a realtor, a lot of times for me, I get sellers that want to sell their house. So they want to sell their house and I go view the house. When I go view the house, if it's meet my criteria, I always put an offer in first before I list it. And I got maybe 2 or 3 properties just like that because people call me to want to sell them. And I go to look at them and I'm like, hey, I can buy this house. I have a lender and I know it need this done. Are you okay with this price? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, but sometimes they're not. If they're not willing to let me buy, I will still list it for sale. But as a real estate agent, people always say, is it worth getting your license? I don't think it's worth getting your license, but I feel like it's my calling to be in real estate because I help so many people find rental properties or sell their house or buy the house. And I haven't had a deal not go through yet. And that's like not gonna
You
work.
and I have a similar story because I left my W-2 job in law enforcement. And at one point, that's where I felt like I was supposed to be. And it just went away. And I felt like I was supposed to be in real estate. Now I'm selling houses. And I know it's not something I ever thought I'd do, but it feels like where I'm supposed to be. And to Brandon's point, it sounds like you've just taken listings and added them as a tool to your tool belt. Okay, well, I can't take this down with Burr, the deal down with Burr. I can't take it as a flip. I can't take it as a rental. They won't sell it to me. I'll just list it for them. Just
Correct.
another move you have in your repertoire that you can take down more deals. And for those type of people, it makes sense to be a realtor. But I agree with you that it doesn't make sense to go do it unless you're committing like this is going to be my full-time job and this is what I'm supposed to do. It's definitely not something to undertake lightly and just think, oh, I'll just do this. How hard could it be?
Because the mistake people make is they see David making money doing real estate. So then they say, hey, David, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license because I'm making money. And people come up to me saying they want to get a license. And I feel like me, I never did good on tests taken. I failed like state tests, college tests and stuff like that. So my real estate license, like I passed all them tests. So it's like meant to be, I passed them tests. It's like, I never failed a real estate test for some reason. I don't know how I passed, but I passed them. So I feel like it's like destined,
Brandon, you kind of mentioned that when you moved to Hawaii, right? It was a similar feeling.
What's that? Like
that you were supposed to be there.
The
like
green,
you mentioned that it just feels like this is home. Like this is where I've been looking for my whole life.
Yeah, like I like to say, like there's that line in C.S. Lewis's like the Last Battle. There's a book by The Last Battle, and where like it's basically like an analogy for the end of the world. And so like the world kind of ends, and these kids, the story, it's like a kid's story. They see like this new place, like this basically like synonymous of like the afterlife or supposed to be. Anyway, and they say, hey, look, it looks like our house. house, but it's like a more real version of our house. And then there's the corner store where we get ice cream. It's like a more real version of our ice cream. Like when I found my house here, it was like, oh, that's like that's the life I knew was there, but this is like a more real version of my life is what I'm trying to get at, right? Like it feels like more vivid. And certain areas of my life have been that way. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here is like all of a sudden you feel like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like that's when you find your purpose or your identity or your like where you're supposed to be aligned in life. It gives you energy. The lights just kind of move green. Doesn't mean it's always easy. You still have to drive the car, but the lights tend to turn green a little bit more because it's just that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, because a lot of deals I had, it take like 5-6 months to close. And I feel like if I didn't love this, I would have gave up. So if you didn't love it, you would be like, nah, I'm tired of this. I'm out.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, can I, before we move to the deal deep dive, I want to comment on one thing. This show is a lot about, we're talking a lot about quitting your job, and you quit your job and then you got freaked out. You got, like, oh, I got to go find something else. And then you tried applying and it didn't work out. I want to bring up a couple points here. First of all, like real estate is a good way for people to quit their job. However, you have to have income to support your family, right? And you knew that. That's why you freaked out a little bit and you decided to go the real estate agent route.
Right.
You also had the thing that a lot of people forget, and that's you were responsible for a number of years with saving money so you could take that risk and quit your job and then go into real estate full time. So like I've heard people like who have nothing and they're just completely brand new. They just get excited and they quit their job right then with no savings. And I would argue that is, I don't want to say foolish because I'm sure there's people that have done good and had success, but it is very risky to have no money whatsoever, which is why David and I are such big fans of house hacking. The more you can eliminate your expenses so you can save more money and have fewer expenses, the quicker you can quit your job. But if you got to buy the new car, you got to have 2 cars in the driveway that both have car payments on it. You got to have the nice house with the $3,000 a month mortgage. You got to have all that stuff, the payment on the couch and all that stuff in your life adds up to payment, and that holds you back. That's the shackles we put on that hold us back from actual freedom and financial freedom in life. So I just encourage people, like look at your story. It's like, look, you didn't go out there and go buy the biggest, baddest, nicest house. We'll just go back and say, I'll just encourage people, save the money, do it right, keep your expenses lower. That's how you get financial freedom. That's how you get out of the rat race. And that's how you get into a really like an amazing life, like your purpose in life, like we're getting at. Now, before we get out of today's show, George, I want to move over to one of the last segments. I think we got 2 more, but second to the last segment, which we call our Deal Deep Dive. These are the same questions we ask every guest about a particular deal that you've done. Do you have a property in mind that we can kind of tear into a little bit in a good way,
Yes.
George? All right, number 1. Yeah, what kind of property is it? Tell us just what is it?
The first property was a duplex.
Okay, David Green.
And how did you find it?
This duplex, it went up for auction, a live auction too. It's one you stand outside and bid on.
Oh, this is that one. Yep.
Yeah, these kind of auctions we have. We still have them here. So I went to the auction and I knew my number was like 65, 70,000. So we bid in. It went up to like $75,000 cash.
Okay.
You have to close on it. You don't get your money back for your 10% down. So I bid up to 65. Somebody outbid me. I was just hurt because this is one of my first deals. And like after I quit the post office, I knew I needed a duplex, some income. So I was like, I had a headache that day because I knew I should have went a bit higher, but I stopped because it's in the moment when you bid in, you like, you don't want to go too high and make a mistake because no inspection or nothing, you got to buy it. So I stopped and I didn't get it. So maybe like 2 weeks later, the duplex come up on the MLS on Realtor. I was like, wow. So it was listed for $110,000. I called the agent. At this time, I'm a realtor. I called the agent and I said, I want to put an offer in for $90,000 because now I can finance it. I can pay higher. I can just finance it. So he was like, all right, cool. The seller came back at $100,000. I didn't want to go that high, but I ain't say I was desperate, but I really, really wanted a duplex, right? So I went up to the $100,000 and I said, we came at $97,000. I told the other realtor he could keep my commission. That's another trick for people who are realtors. Yep. A lot of times I don't even get commission. I give the other realtor my commission in order for them to make the deal come to me. So I did it, I think $97,500, something like that. And he keep the whole 6%. And he was like, we made it happen. So we under contract. I get the inspection done. Inspection, just regular inspection, nothing major. But the appraiser come back at $78,000. You want me to keep going or?
Yeah. Well, the next question is, how did you negotiate it then?
Yeah, so the appraiser come back at $78,000. You know, I'm buying it for $97,500, and the appraiser come back at $78,000. So on the Bigger Pockets, I never heard this happen before. So I was stuck. Out of all the podcasts I listened to, I still have things happen to me that I haven't heard on the podcast. So I'm like, appraiser come back at 78. I asked my broker and a couple other realtors. They were like, George, never buy a deal if it doesn't appraise, you know, what you're buying it for. So I was like, but I know it's worth more than that. I just felt like the appraiser, so I could test the appraiser, the bank. I tried to send the comps, and they still is $78,000. So a guy you just had on the show, Mr. Rick Jarman, I called Mr. Rick because I don't have nobody in my circle like here that got that much experience in real estate. So I called Mr. Rick. I explained the situation. He was like, George, I would pay $5,000-$10,000 over appraiser if it's worth it. If you know, if the numbers work, it rents, do it. So what happened was, once I had leverage though, I didn't realize it because the seller knew it appraised for $78,000. So she ended up coming down to $85,000 because the whole point was she couldn't sell it because it appraised at $78,000. So in the end, I shouldn't even contest the appraiser because I had more leverage by saying it appraised at $78,000.
Yeah.
So she ended up coming down for $85,000 finance, and then I owner finance $5,000. So it came out total $90,000.
Wow. All right. That's a unique way to put that together. I like that you got the owner financing for the remaining $5,000. That's cool.
So we see that you seller financed a piece of it. How did you fund the rest of it?
Okay. So I regular 25% down on the multifamily. I thought I just put 20% down, but multifamily, you have to put 25% down. So I put the 25% down on the $85,000, and then the owner financed the $5,000 over 2 years. You know, no interest.
Thank you, COVID, for creating this lending debacle.
Was this pre-COVID or after COVID?
Well, no, this was back in September of last year. So this was way before COVID.
I thought you just met Rick through the podcast, and that didn't.
Nah, this was back in September last year.
Did he tell you that liars can number, but numbers can't lie?
I love this. I love his Southern sayings. They're so good. All right. What did you do with the property then? You held on to it?
Yes. So once I was vacant, and one of the things, the number part you said, the MLS said it was rented out for $700, right? So the final day before closing, I get the leases. I didn't realize I should got the lease earlier. I get the lease and it's rented out for $600. So I'm like, hold on. On the MLS, it said it was rented for $700. So the lease is for $600. So, but I still closed on the deal because the lease was ending in like 3 months. So I closed on that deal and I rented out the other side. And here where I'm at, properties, if you start working, like you see people still shovel outside, some paint going on the wall, cars are stopping. So it is no problem renting it out. All my properties get rented out before I even put a for rent sign out.
Yeah, by the way, that's just a quick tip for everybody. There's a thing called an estoppel certificate or an estoppel agreement. If you're buying a property with tenants in place, before you close, like during the due diligence period, have the tenant, you actually have the owner, have the tenant sign an estoppel agreement, which says, this is my rent, this is my security deposit, this is when my lease ends, this is if I have a lease or not, this is a month to month. Like you basically get the tenant to say all the facts. Then you can use that to compare it to whatever they like the agent listed the property as and look for discrepancies and renegotiate right then and find problems. Like just there's a good tip for everybody out there, and it's not very well known, but there you go.
First off, usually only brokers and agents know about that. Second off, that's a lot of syllables in one word.
I don't even. I might even. Am I saying it right? I actually I have no idea. I only read. I don't talk.
Yeah,
good.
Look at you.
Look at me.
Stepping up your game.
All right.
It's all that brain energy you're saving wearing the same T-shirt every day.
Every day I save
some words better.
That's what you do. You should try it. Anyway. All right.
All right, George. What lessons did you learn from this deal?
Oh, from that deal, I learned that, I was so upset when I lost that deal at the auction, but just being persistent and patient, I ended up getting a duplex. And I don't think I'll probably ever sell a duplex because it took me such a whirlwind, it's like sentimental value maybe.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's an awesome story. I like that. I like the fact that you went for it. It was listed at so high. You got it. Like, I don't call it negotiation, but it kind of is all real. That is negotiations. You got them down through the appraisal, and eventually you landed a great deal that now you just have and you rent out. And so, what's it renting for right now? Each side?
Each side is rented for $700 each side now. And I learned that negotiation. You had a guy on your podcast, negotiator. It was like you always say my highest I want to go is 90,000. And, you know, I tell the sob story of what's all wrong with the house, and you're probably not going to like my offer, but I give you 80 for it. Yeah. And it works. You know, I never think, my dad always said, man, that stuff don't work. Because when we drive long distance, I make him listen to BiggerPockets.
Nice.
So, and this before I started buying properties, but he didn't think the stuff on BiggerPockets worked. But I'm telling people, like, the things that you guys say on here, it works. It really does work.
That's awesome, man. Appreciate that. Well, with that, let's get over to the last segment of the show, something you've heard many, many times before. And now we're going to ask you, it's time for our world famous four. I almost went fire round.
Yeah, you threw me off there.
All right, time for the famous four. These are the same four questions we ask every guest every week here on the podcast. So, number one, what is your favorite or current favorite or all-time favorite real estate related book?
Favorite real estate book. I always have like different phrases I'm going through. Yeah. But overall, I would say How to Get Rich in Real Estate by Robert Kent. I have it right here.
Oh, nice.
It's an old book.
How to Get Rich in Real Estate. Yeah, I never read that one.
Yes, it's the 15%. If it rent for 15% of what it costs, no, if it costs $100,000 and rent for $15,000 a year, it's a decent deal. Simple. It's like simple.
All right.
All right. What about your favorite business book?
Favorite business book? Doing Business by the Good Bible. It's basically like doing business the biblical way. So like once you listen to a lot of real estate podcasts, honestly, I don't really learn a lot after listening to 200 episodes, but I pick up one or two things from each episode that I attach to me. So that's like one part. But as far as just doing business, doing people right and wrong, that's what I take from that book, business, doing it the right way.
There you go. By the way, I looked this up earlier because I thought there was something related you mentioned earlier. I couldn't find the exact verse I was looking for, but Ecclesiastes 11:6, sow your seed in the morning and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed or whether both of them alike will be good. That's my new real estate quote of my life.
Always be sowing.
Yeah, always be sowing. That's gonna be my shirt. ABS. Always be sowing. If you want to buy an always be sowing shirt, go ahead to biggerpockets.com/shirt. Seriously, I'm gonna make it. All right. With that, next question.
Next question is, George, what are your hobbies?
My hobbies are, that's crazy. I do my hobbies every day now. I love real estate, but outside of real estate, I play basketball. I do have a podcast, New American Dream podcast. And I have a family. So one of my reason why I wanted to quit my job is I had my son. So I had him April of 2018. And that 1 year just working, missing first steps and all that, that was my why. Like I wanted to quit. I wanted to spend time with him. So now I take him to daycare every morning. And that was like my reason why.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, last question for me. What do you think sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I want to say taking action, but the thing is, people remember your job is something you can get fired from. Your work is your purpose. So find out what your purpose is in life and you can never get fired.
Wise words.
Very nice.
Cool.
All right. This has been awesome, George. Tell us, where can people find out more about you?
You can find me on Instagram at George Do Real Estate. I also have a YouTube channel called George Do Real Estate. I do a lot of things on there. And my podcast, New American Dream Podcast.
All right. So George of Real Estate. Very, very cool. New American Dream Podcast. Very cool. Yes. Everyone go check that out after this show's done. And yeah, awesome, man. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks.
David Green, want to take us out of here?
Yeah. Thanks again, George. It was great getting to know you. This is David Green for George Can't Not Outbid Gipson and Brandon, a wise man once said Turner, signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.